Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to utilize some of the elk that I shot back on my September hunt, and we're going to make a birria style tacos. Now birria is a traditional Mexican dish that typically uses either goat meat or lamb meat. Some people make it with beef, but rather than doing that, we're going to make a birria style taco using the shank of the elk that I shot. And so this should give us a good flavorful birria that we'll use for the tacos. Birria is basically a stewed meat that's stewed in a combination, in a broth, savory broth of chilies and different herbs and spices and so forth, and it's slow cooked for a long time until the meat just falls off the bone, and then we'll come back and prepare it and put it into a taco form. So I've got a little bit of prep work that needs to be done, and rather than y'all sitting here watching me do that, I'm going to take you back to New Mexico in September and show you where we got the elk, and then we'll be right back to put everything together. Down. Zoom it out. Yes! She's down! Oh my gosh. Yes! That's so... Oh man. She's down right over there. Oh man. I gotta call at him. I gotta let somebody know. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I'm so overcome with emotion. Okay, I gotta think here. Anyway, we are 30 minutes before dark. I don't know which camera to look at. In the, I heard something. I look back over there. The cow and her calf were coming across. 20 yards. Money. I just drew back. She heard me. I kind of hit the deal. She heard me and looked up. It's too late. I'd released. So I hit her, and she ran around this section of pines, and then kind of up the hill, and I heard her coming back around, and then she started coming back towards me, and then just, I guess she was stumbling, but she fell, and she's right there. Right there. She's probably about 70 yards away right now. Yes! All right, so here we go. Gosh, those are such big animals. Good night. That is a big animal. Thank you, Jesus. All right, so that was one of my favorite hunts of all time, of course, and that was really exciting. So I went ahead and broke down the animal, skinned it, quartered it right there on the mountain. We got it back down, put it on ice, brought it back here to the house, and then I decided to do my own processing of it. I did a video a couple years ago on how to break down a deer, and it's pretty much the same thing, just on a little bit larger scale, but all the muscle groups are kind of the same. If you watch that video, you know that what I like to do is I like to just separate all the muscle groups and then freeze them whole, and that gives me a little bit more flexibility in what I can use each thing for. But there's certain cuts of meat that I just don't feel like I get the right use out of, and I ended up just cutting them up and putting them in my sausage grind and making sausage out of it, which turns out really great. We just made sausage a few weeks ago, and I used some of the elk, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I had these shanks. I just kept that whole foreleg. I actually just took a big piece and vacuum sealed it, put it in the deep freeze. I was actually intending to make some ossobuco out of it, and I'd still like to do that. This was actually inspired a little bit by the channel on YouTube, Sous Vide Everything. I don't know if you've ever watched him, and Guga makes some really great stuff. He'd use some beef short ribs, and then he put some bone marrow in there. I'm assuming it was oxtails or something else. Of course, he did it sous vide style. I'm sure it turns out great. You can sous vide it for 24 hours, but I'm of the opinion there's certain things you don't need to sous vide. You just need to cook it low and slow. And so I decided to go ahead and cook this in the Dutch oven, and I felt like using those shanks with that bone marrow would give me kind of similar results to what he's getting with the bone marrow, the oxtails, and the beef short ribs that he's using. So while y'all were away, I went ahead and took that shank and I used my Sawzall and I cut through the bone, cut through the meat so that I could get it into manageable sized chunks. I'm gonna cook it in the Dutch oven. I also took some dried chilies and I cut the stems off of them and poured out the seeds. For this I used 5 guajillo chilies, and I think I used 3, maybe 4 ancho chilies. If you want to add some heat, you can add some chile de arbol. I also, in the sauce, I'm going to put in some chipotle chili and adobo sauce, just a couple of those, just to add a little bit more heat. Also cut up some tomatoes, diced some onion, cut up a little bit of cilantro, and gathered all the other ingredients that we'll need to finish off the dish. So the first thing we want to do is just kind of get our peppers and just kind of toast them a little bit in a cast iron Dutch oven. Actually, it's what we have here. You can do it in a skillet, whatever. Just to kind of wake them up a little bit. You don't want to overdo this. The flavors, the essential oils in them, kind of wake those up, get them going around. We're actually going to soak them in water and rehydrate them. But before we do that, we want to give them a light toasting. All right, so in that same pan, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take a little bit of a neutral oil. I've got some avocado oil, and I'm going to put just a little bit of oil in the bottom of that pan. And I've got my seasoned shanks here that I've cut up, and we're going to brown those and get the flavors, that depth of flavor that everybody talks about. And all we're looking for here is just to add some deep color to it, kind of caramelization on that meat. So one of the reasons that I wanted to use this elk shank is because we've got that bone marrow in there, and I want that deep, rich flavor that's going to come from that bone marrow to be in our stew. And as we stew this down, that bone marrow will come out of there, and it'll give us a really nice flavor profile. Okay, now we're going to add just a little bit more oil to it. I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit to kind of a medium high. And then I'm going to put those onions in there. We want to sweat those onions down to get that soft and translucent. Maybe add just a little bit of caramelization to it. Add a little bit of pepper, pinch of kosher salt. We don't want to burn those onions, so I turn the heat down just a little bit. Maybe add a little bit more oil to it. We're going to add just some chopped garlic to it. And we only want that in there for just a few seconds so that we don't burn it. Scorch that garlic. And then we're going to deglaze our pan. I'm actually using a little bit of apple cider vinegar to deglaze the pan here. And what that's going to do is that's going to get all those bits and that flavor, that fond as they call it, off of the bottom of the pan. Apple cider vinegar is going to add a nice little tang to it, just another layer of that flavor that we've talked about. So we're going to go ahead and turn the heat off of this for now, and I'm going to put that meat back in here, and then we're going to prepare the sauce that we're going to pour over this and braise it with using those chipotle peppers. So we took our toasted dried peppers and we put them into a blender, and then we poured some actually venison broth, venison bone broth that I had made. You could use a beef stock or any kind of stock, or even just water, boiling water. And then we let them sit there for about 15 or 20 minutes so that they could rehydrate. We had an onion to it, or about a half of a yellow onion, tomatoes that we cut up, 2 chipotle chilies and the adobo sauce. And then we put in some Mexican oregano, some cumin, some salt. I added just a little bit of honey into it, just to add a little bit of sweetness. We went ahead and blended that up into really till it's as smooth as we could get it. And then we just poured that over the shanks that we had back in the Dutch oven. And we just want it to kind of cover that meat in there. If you need to, you can add some additional broth to it. We're gonna put some thyme sprigs. We're gonna put a bay leaf in there, cinnamon stick that I'm gonna put in there, just some things that we'll remove later, but we're just gonna let that kind of simmer on the stove, and it's probably gonna be 3 to 4 hours. And we just want that meat to slowly cook until all of that connective tissue dissolves, the fat renders out, the bone marrow renders out of those bones, and then that'll create a really nice, deep, rich, savory sauce for our meat. And then we'll come back and put together those tacos. All to do now is wait, maybe drink a beer or two, and then we'll be back as soon as it's ready. Okay, so it looks like our meat is fully cooked here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually pull the meat out of this broth. We're gonna stir it around just a little bit. You can see that meat is just falling off the bone, pulls off easily. And so most of it's already, looks like it's pretty good. So we're gonna pull that out. My mouth is watering. We're gonna pull out the meat chunks and put it in a bowl. And then we're gonna just shred it up. Okay, it should just easily pull apart with a couple of forks. I'm gonna leave those bones in there and just let them continue to break down the meat that's on those bones. But it's time to eat. And you can look in there. I've already pulled some of that bone marrow out of there. And that bone marrow by itself, if you've never just had bone marrow, is buttery, smooth, sweet, awesome tasting. Take a couple of forks and just shred it up. Just like this. You can see how that just pulls apart. Just super tender. And I want to pull it apart pretty fine. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take our spoon and we're going to take some of that sauce, that broth. Now a lot of people will actually strain that. I'm not going to strain it. I'm just going to leave it just the way it is. We'll see how it does. I haven't ever had this before. Obviously have never cooked it before. So I'm anxious to see. I've been sampling and I can tell you the taste is fantastic. All right, so we're gonna take a couple of our tortillas and we're gonna dip them in this adobo sauce, this nice sauce that we made for our meat. And then we're gonna put them on a flat top skillet, grill, cast iron is what we've got here, and just let them sit for a couple of minutes. I went ahead and oiled that. The first couple I did, and my cast iron skillet stuck. So I sprayed it down with some cooking spray. But we're just gonna let that sit there and kind of crisp up on one side for now, and then we'll flip it over. We want to still be pliable so that we can put the meat on it and then fold it over and make tacos out of it. But we're gonna just let it sit for just a minute until it's firmed up on one side, and then we'll flip them over. Okay, so we got them flipped over. And we're going to take some of this melty cheese. We've got Monterey freshly shredded, and we're going to put a healthy amount on there, on each of these tortillas. And just let that melt. Traditional would be Oaxaca cheese. I couldn't find that at the store yesterday, so we're just using a little jack cheese. And then once that starts melting, then we're going to put some of our meat, our shredded meat on there. And I'm going to take some little cilantro, some chopped onion. My wife's not big on chopped onion, but I'll make some for her. And then I'm going to take a little bit, just a spoonful, tongs full of that sauce, and just put it on right over the top of it right there. And then we're going to take it and we're going to fold it over just like that. Squish it down and we cook it on both sides. We want to crisp it up now on both sides of that. Okay, once we have it crisped on one side, we lost a little piece right there. We've got to get that guy back in there. Can't be getting away from us now. We're just going to shove him right back in there. All right, we'll flip the other one. You see we got a nice little char, nice toast on that one side. We're going to do the same thing, flip that over, and that's going to be good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different bowl. We're going to take some of our sauce and we're going to make us a dipping sauce. So we're going to take that, just put it in that bowl right there. And we'll take some of our chopped cilantro, put it in there, some of these chopped onions, just like that. A squeeze of lime. Now we need a plate. We're going to plate these up, just like this. Make sure that little guy gets back in there. All right, so we got our two crispy tacos right there. And then we'll take our sauce. Again, this is a first timer's effort. I'm going to taste it first without any of that sauce. That is good. Okay, I'm sure y'all don't want to sit and listen to me and watch me eat here. But now we're going to take this taco right there, which is still very hot, burning my fingers, and we're going to dip it in that sauce. So good. It's such a deep, rich sauce. Just great flavor. You can kind of feel the fatty. Lime cuts that really nicely. There's onions and that cilantro in there. Really good. So this is a great way. I will be making this a lot more. This is a great use of those front shanks. I'm going to try it with deer, whitetail. This was with elk, but I imagine it's going to be very similar to it. Really good. Cooking by yourself is a little difficult in filming, so appreciate y'all sticking with me through this. I'm going to go finish eating. Thank y'all for joining me, and we'll see you on the next video.